Right, I'm just in the process of removing the air filter so that I can remove the starter motor just to give it a service and paint it back up, and later on we'll be removing the carbs. So there's just these two bolts that hold the air filter ends together, and then I'm squeezing it out from the side if I can. There we go. It's come out, and I'll put a new air filter in as a matter of course, only because it's been sitting there with dust gathering and so on. And then we should better ease these rubbers off single-handedly, hopefully. And then we'll be able to have better access to the starter motor to get that off. Try and do this left-handed. There we go. Okay, so that's the sort of back plate of the air filter off. It's all stainless steel, of course, which is great. That's good because it gives us more room now to get the carbs off, because I need to take the carbs off because I want to clean them because they've been sitting for 10 years, probably gunged up. And of course, getting the carburetors off, if you've ever tried it on a Commando, is a nightmare. Because you can try and get the flange nuts off, but then it's almost impossible to reach. Well, I think it is impossible to reach the centre ones. So you have to take the manifold Allen keys off and screws off with an Allen key. But even then, it's very, very hard to reach the centre too. And what you have to do is you get an Allen key and you have to cut it down, because the Allen key fouls on the other end of the manifold. So you have to have a very short Allen key. We'll come to that when we come to remove the carbs. All right, so I'm getting ready to take the carbs off. So this is the cut down Allen key. So you cut it down. Oops, I'm looking at, there we go. Where's it gone? There it is. You cut it down so you can get it in there, in the gap between the Allen screw and the back of the manifold. And then I'll probably have to get a hammer on that, but I just want to show you. I mean, it's a really awkward job, but that's what you got to do, and then slowly, bit by bit, unscrew these Allen screws here. You can't get to them from the bottom, unfortunately, because there'd be a lot more room if you could, but you can't because of the angle of them. But there we go. Right, anyway, I'm going to just work away, the next half an hour, like quarter of a turn at a time, and remove the Allen screws from the middle, and then the carbs will come off with the manifold. Right, there we go. After much work and frustration and fiddling about, the carbs are both off. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the tops off the carbs, which will leave the actual throttle slide and the needle just hanging there. But that's okay. It's just a bit of a pain getting all the cables out, especially with the throttle on the Mark III with this the metal angle, which is nice, but a bit of a pain to remove. So I'm just going to leave the throttle slides hanging there, because it's the bodies that I need to get off just to check they're not blocked inside with old petrol, and I don't really need to look at the throttle slides because obviously they're brand new. So it's just easy. I'm going to take the throttle tops off so I can take the carbs away, leave the throttle, leave the actual slides and that hanging there. It's worth noting, by the way, that I haven't actually tried the throttle. I didn't actually try up until this point, and when I went to do it, it was jammed. The throttles are actually just like slightly stuck in the carbs, and I had to give it a bit of a good old yank on the throttle, and suddenly poof, and off they went. But that's what happens. Standing 10 years, they were just like stuck in there in the actual carbs. Right, I'll take the tops off, and then we can get the carbs onto the bench. And there we are. I've taken the tops off, and so that's the throttle slide, and they're looking understandably, just a bit, I wouldn't say corroded. What's the word? Just a bit of powder and that on them where they've just been sitting. You can see the where the carburetor's been, and then this is the choke assembly that goes up and down. And when the choke's on, this this slide will comes down below the throttle slide, blocks off the venturi, and that chokes it. And there's the needles, all okay. So we just leave these hanging there, making sure I've got them on the same on either side, so I can put them back in the same carburetor. And then we'll have a look at the carbs, take them apart, just clean them out. To be honest, looking at things at the moment, everything's as clean as a whistle. These are the this is the fuel pipe, and you know, there's nothing at all in the filters. There's no gunge, you know, like jelly. Fuel can turn to jelly, but there's no jelly in there. So maybe they're okay, but obviously we're going to check them and clean them anyway. But to be honest, I think I'm going to take the carbs apart and just find they're completely empty and put them back together, but we'll see. We'll see. Right, so we have the carburetors off the bike now and on the bench. The carburetor tops, the float, the throttle valve, etc. I've left them here. We will be, I'll be taking at least one of them apart later on just to show you the needle assembly. But we'll leave, and this is the choke, this is the throttle slide, and this is the needle. We'll be taking them apart later on so you can see those. But for now we're concentrating on the carburetors themselves, and we're going to take them apart to clean them, because they can get blocked up, especially the pilot circuits can get blocked up with lack of use with stale petrol. I think at this point I've just mentioned that really you have two carburetors in one. You have the pilot circuit, which is what provides fuel and air mixture on tick over, and then you have the main carburetor that operates when you accelerate. All right, so I think if you understand that, then you know, it makes the whole thing a lot easier as to why the pilot circuit is so important. I always think of it as two carburetors, one pilot circuit and one main circuit. It's the pilot circuit that tends to block up because it deals with such fine drillings, oil sort of fuel ways inside the carburetor, because obviously this tick over only uses a very little amount of fuel and air, and so they're very fine sort of drillings, and they can block up. Right, okay, so we've got the carbs here. They're what are they, 932 carburetors. We've got R300, which means it's the right hand side carburetor, and this one is L301, so it's a left hand carburetor. I've still got the manifolds on, and we'll be taking those off, and we've got a hook here which holds the oil feed to the rockers, but we'll be taking those off shortly. Now, so what have we got? We've got three sort of controls, as it were, on the carburetors. Okay, so that's your tickle, and these are extended tickle pins, which just about all carbs these days have. It just means that you can tickle the carburetor without getting petrol all over your finger or your gloves. Worst of all, because of course it gets in the glove, never really comes out again. So extended tickle pins, which you can retrofit quite easily. If you've got old carburetors, then you can fit these extended tickle pins. They basically, they are just a push fit. You actually just pull the top off. Well, that's on the extended ones, but we'll look inside. There's just a little sort of spring and clip that holds them together, and so you can replace those quite easily. Okay, what else we got? We've then got this screw here, and these screws control the sort of tick over. Then you got these two screws. These are the air screws, and they regulate how much mixture is in the pilot circuit. All right, they do not control the mixture for the main throttle opening. So these are mixture screws, but only air screws, but only for the pilot circuit when the bike is on tick over. So this is important to understand, because people sometimes think they're adjusting these and adjusting the whole mixture of the carburetor. That isn't the case. These are just a mixture for tick over. They're normally set at 1.5 turns out. That's the sort of standard setting, and then they're fine-tuned after that. We'll do fine-tuning hopefully when the bike's all together. Basically, when the engine's warm, you have these set at 1.5. You then set the bike to quite a fast tick over, because it's just easier to do it that way. Then you just turn these 1/2 turn or 1/4 of a turn either way, and basically when you get the fastest tick over possible, that is a perfect setting. So if you turn it too much one way or the other, the tick over it might go up, but it should start to drop. If it starts to drop, you've gone too far one way or the other. Okay, the fastest tick over position you can obtain with the engine warm, that's the optimum setting, which is normally around 1.5 turns out, which is how you always start setting. Okay, so I think that's the basics. Oh yeah, then the other side of the carbs, you've got an empty drilling. This is like the inside of the carbs. You can't get to them anyway, because they're like on the bike. They're like next to each other like that, so you can't get to them. But you do have these, what would appear to be drillings for a screw that we don't have, which in some way is the case. Now, the other end of these drillings is the actual pilot jet. Now, and it's that can block up very easily. Now, on Premier carbs that you can buy from AMAL now, you will find that there is a brass screw, sort of like a crosshead screw, that is in there. Because what they've done on Premier carbs is they have made it so you can unscrew, and the pilot jet is actually in that brass. When you pull it out, the pilot jet's actually in the screw, and so basically you can clean the pilot jet circuit out so much easier, because the screw comes out, you clean the pilot jet's actually there, then you can get some spray in and clear out the rest of the circuit, which you cannot do on these carbs. And that's why it's harder to clean out the pilot jet on a standard carb, because it's difficult to get to the pilot jet. If the pilot jet is really, really blocked, you take out this screw, which reveals the pilot jet inside. But if it's really, really blocked, it can be hard to unblock it. You have to poke bits of thin wire down. Sometimes even carb cleaner isn't enough if they're really badly blocked to clean them out. Whereas that's the real advantage of the Premier carbs, is they have this removable jet, and also the pilot jet has been moved. It's not actually in the body; it's actually in the little screw itself. And that means if you want to change the jetting size on a Premier carb, it's much easier, because you just simply change that screw, because the actual jet is in that screw. Okay, I was going to say, I'm not sure what standard size main jet pilot jets are in there. I'd say probably 19 or 20, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. They're set at the factory. Right, okay, is that yeah, that's kind of about it for the introduction. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start taking them apart. We're going to take the float chambers off, and then generally all I think, because these are brand new carbs, all that's going to need doing is cleaning. Now, if these weren't brand new carbs, I would worry, because what people don't realise is these wear out really fast. The throttle slides, these throttle slides, can wear very, very quickly. Dear, something wrong with my throat. And so do the sides, the bores of the carburetors. Now, what that does is it lets air in, because they're not an airtight fit anymore as they wear. Dear. And if air gets in, it messes up the whole mixture, because the mixture is set, to let a certain amount of air in, and suddenly there's extra air coming in round. When it comes in there, it comes around the side of the slides, and the whole thing's messed up. So it's important. I forgot where I started that conversation, but I think what I'm saying is that you can clean your carbs out and this, that, and the other, but if they're worn, then it's not going to work, and that's particularly noticeable trying to set the tick over, because the because the worn carbs most affects the pilot circuit, because that's when the throttle slides are fully down. They should be sealing the air off completely, but if they're worn, they'll be letting air past them, and it messes the whole thing up, and you get uneven running. And then you get the classic one of the bike's ticking over a bit unevenly. You open the throttle, and it kind of half dies before it picks up. That transition from pilot circuit to main circuit is always a very difficult one. Well, it is on A-miles. So, you know, you need to get, A, the carbs need to be cleaned out, and B, you need to make sure there's no air leaks. Now, there are some firms that will recondition your carbs if that's what you want. Yeah, so I use Richard Darby at 3D Motorcycles in Wolverhampton, and he will recondition your carbs. He'll drill them out and re-sleeve them. He will even change them to Premier spec and drill this pilot out and put in the sort of Premier type pilots, so to make it easier to clean out in future. And he'll fit new throttle slides and so on. However, you're probably getting near to the cost price of a new set of carbs. So, you know, it'll put extended tickle pins and so on, new floats. It'll recondition the whole thing. But, you know, you are then getting near to new carbs, and he's probably got a big waiting list. But anyway, if you want to do that, you want to keep your bike totally original or whatever, that's an option. Or you buy new A-miles, or as I tend to do, I buy new A-mile Premiers. Because, you know, from my experience, if your bike's not running right, you know, it's not pulling, it's misfire, whatever, the chances are it's the carbs that are the problem. I mean, there's the old saying, which is very true: if you've got a carb problem, it's normally the electrics, and if you've got an electrical problem, it's normally the carbs. But I find that there's more chance of there being a problem with the carbs than there is of the electrics. I generally find the electrics, you know, the spark either works or it doesn't, but that's not always the case. More likely, if you've got a problem with poor running and poor idling and one thing or another, it tends to be the carbs. So what I tend to do is, you know, these are new, but if they weren't, I would be tempted to buy new ones. Also, the newer ones are designed so they do actually wear less anyway. They've got different throttle slides and so on. But you know, so it's up to you. But those are the options. But just be aware that these can be beggars, and you need to keep the pilot circuit cleaned, and make sure that the throttle slides aren't worn and letting air past them. Okay, enough. Let's get on and start taking the carbs apart. And don't forget, if you're interested, that there is the workshop manual, the Enthusiast's Restoration Manual, published, written by myself, the Norton Commando, published by Veloce, and that's written about the, you know, it's a full start to finish restoration manual from when I bought my bike, and you know, restored it right the way through. So it's a step-by-step restoration guide covering all the sort of stuff we're doing on the video. So if you are interested, obviously highly recommended reading.